Live your life within the moment. And don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over. All that I know is we'll get older. So let us dance this night
Before we begin, please listen to the following important public service announcement from the Honorable Judy Heumann. Judy was the former United States Assistant Secretary of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services in the Clinton administration and the former U.S. State Department's Special Advisor for International Disability Rights in the Obama administration. Recently, Judy starred in the Netflix documentary Crip Camp.
Hello, my name is Judy Heumann. I'm here today to encourage you to please take your COVID vaccine. And if you have friends and family that haven't, please encourage them also. COVID is to be taken seriously. In addition to taking the vaccine, please use other protective methods. Wear a mask, use gloves, and sanitize frequently. If you need additional information and you live in Eastern Oregon, you can contact EOCIL. Thank you, and protect yourselves and the community.
Welcome to Queer Coded, a podcast by Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living, a global disability resource and advocacy center. I am your host, Ellen Buxton. Over the course of this series, we will cover a variety of topics related to EOCIL's core priorities: disability actionable research, disability independent living community services, disability crisis and emergency response services, HIV prevention and harm reduction services, disability two-spirit and LGBTQIA+ advocacy and services, HIV community services, and disability water and food security services. Throughout this series, we will be highlighting the experiences of LGBTQ+ individuals, both shedding light on challenges faced by LGBTQ+ community members, as well as celebrating their joys and successes. We will uplift queer voices while fostering visibility and representation. We will be speaking to individuals with lived experience, leaders of global and local advocacy organizations, and people responsible for developing and implementing policies that affect our daily lives, and we will learn from each other along the way. So today I will be speaking with Nathan Smith. Nathan Smith has been attached to the art of female impersonation since his first college fundraising show in October of 2006. On stage, Nathan is known as Chelsea Nicole Parker. Philanthropy and fundraising inevitably led him to pageantry and competition. He won several preliminary titles and a couple of state titles. Those state crowns were roads to national competitions, and in 2016, when he competed in his last pageant, he was crowned Miss Gay Supreme by a future drag television personality and beat out another future drag television personality to win the title. In October of 2018, Nathan made the decision to leave the drag stage. He returned, however, on Halloween of 2022 and worked as part of a trio of drag queens who entertain a historically homophobic, transphobic, racist, and sexist community with a monthly show. He relocated from Avon, Indiana to Pendleton, Oregon in July of 2023 to start work as a therapist focusing on queer mental health issues for Community Counseling Solutions in Pendleton. He was joined by his 3 rescue pups, Jackson, Dominic, and Olivia. His academic and cultural background is rooted in LGBTQ+ topics such as gender expression, gender roles, and stigma and stereotypes, as well as conversations about the coming out process. Nathan is happy to share his experiences as a drag queen and HIV/AIDS activist and can offer a safe space to ask the tough questions. So welcome, Nathan. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing A-okay. Super happy to be here. I've been super stoked to do this interview because you seem so stinking interesting. Would you like to start in the drag queen realm, or do you want to start talking about mental health specialist stuff?
We can start with drag. That seems to be more fun.
Yeah. So, can you introduce yourself and tell us about your journey into the world of drag, specifically in a rural setting?
Yeah, so I grew up the oldest of 4 kids with a single mom, and I came out at 18. My mom told me she was pregnant. I told her I was gay. And once the smoke kind of cleared, the dust settled a few years later, and we could have a frank talk about that, it was still really kind of unknown what that meant. And it was kind of murky, and I was still single. I wasn't dating anybody. I just knew this about myself. And she said, during this time, there was a very large amount of sensational daytime TV that kind of sensationalized drag and trans entertainers. And I can remember specifically I think it was either Jerry Springer or Maury Povich that was like, is he or isn't he a woman, or is she or isn't she a man? And I remember seeing those, and through life, I've been able to meet several of those people that have been on those shows because they were the pioneers of drag. I grew up in Indiana, but when I told my mom, she said, okay, I understand that you like boys, you like men, like you're attracted to men. Does that mean that you want to be a woman? And I was like, no, I don't want to be a woman. I like being a boy. Like that's all good. Well, 10 years later, I'm in my undergrad, and I am working with a gay straight alliance through Ball State University called Spectrum. And they were getting ready to do a benefit show. And they asked me if I would like to perform. And I said, oh, I don't know. It seems like a lot of work, and I don't know. You never know how you're going to look until the makeup and the hair's on and everything. You're kind of committed at that point, right? You can't say, yeah, I put all this on and I decided it's not going to work. So I did the charity show. My best friend at the time, as a cisgendered bio female, did my makeup for the first year that I was a drag queen because I didn't know how to do my own makeup. I did some titles. My first title I won was I was Miss Gay Bloomington Newcomer in 2008. And then that year I went on to win Miss Gay Muncie in 2008. And it was really on the back of HIV and AIDS activism and advocacy that I really got involved with the pageant systems, because I saw that there was, on a collegiate level, there was a lot of desire for people to they wanted to help. What can I do, to help bring awareness and educate? And I was, older at the time, and I had friends that were living with HIV. I'll never forget my drag mother, Lena Myers, who was Miss Gay Indiana in 1991. She asked me one time, would you ever date somebody that was HIV positive? And I said, well, I don't see why that's a problem. No, yeah, of course I would. Well, I just ask people that because it's something that it's important to me to know. And I understand that. Not to tell too much of her story, but she was one of the few that survived the HIV AIDS crisis in Indiana in, the 80s and 90s. And she will tell stories about going to funerals during the day and then doing drag benefit shows that in the evening to raise money for people to be buried or raise money for the ACT. So she had lived a long life, and she still is one of the greatest contacts I made in drag. Not only did she help me shape my makeup skills and she gave me opportunities, but she also educated me on the history of HIV and pageantry, and just really kind of opened me up to that. I became a pageant queen. I was booked in shows. I would go work anywhere anybody asked me, because I just wanted to help. I performed at Circle City Pride several years. I did everything that I could to try to get the word out. And then in 2016, I had been out of grad school for a year, and I had taken a break from pageantry, and I wanted to go back one more time and pay for everything with, my actual job, because I could pay for things instead of trying to, scrape by to put a package together for a pageant. And I did the pageant. I won. I went to the state level. I didn't win that one, which was fine. I just accomplished what I came to accomplish, which was paying for my, entire package. Everybody got paid cash, my dancers, my dresser, everybody. So that felt really good. It kind of felt like I rewrote a chapter of my life. I was still performing until 2018, and there was a lot of race war material started by the really I don't know what you would call them, problematic white kids. There was a lot of, oh, well, hey, black kids in the community, aren't you so mad that she's doing a Beyonce song? And the black kids were like, no, we told her it was a good idea. Well, you should be so mad about that. So they created this whole fake, like, culture war and race war that was never there, to try to get their name out. And from what I hear, it's the same players back in Indiana that are still doing it. They're still trying to, they're calling people's jobs, trying to get them fired because of this and that, and just really just troublemakers. I could say ugly people, but I think that speaks for itself. You just see them and you know they were ugly, but you may not know that they're also shady people. But so I stopped doing drag because it stopped being fun. It wasn't fun to me anymore. I didn't. I do performance art. I'm an entertainer. I'm not even a female impersonator. I'm a drag queen. Like, there's nothing about me that impersonates a woman other than maybe having, breasts that are, put on, and hip pads and a shape and a style. But there's nothing about me that impersonates a woman. I'm a drag queen. I'm an over-exaggerated entertainer. And it stopped being fun. Everything got micromanaged. You had people, that year, Circle City Pride, the president did some grandstanding and said that there was no longer going to be armed off-duty sheriffs working Pride to do security because it made some people uncomfortable. And while I understand, and I can't fully comprehend, but I understand how that presence would be offensive and upsetting to some people, I also understand that I've seen those opportunities where those people who are LGBTQ walked in the parade in their sheriff's uniform holding the hand of their husband, and setting an example of you can do anything. These hyper masculine, historically homophobic careers, you can go in and be out and be gay and be a sheriff and walk down the Pride Parade route with your partner hand in hand for everybody to see. And so it was a snap judgment. It was a very rash decision. And I felt like it was made really just to kind of grandstand, to be on the back of the Black Lives Matter movement of saying, we support you and we want to get in on this. And it was obvious that it was grandstanding because there was no Pride Festival that year. That was the year of COVID. So they preemptively made a moment out of something that wasn't even going to happen. So it just was really kind of poorly conceived. It just felt really, really ugly. And so between that and the kids starting the drama and all this, I stepped away from the stage. I retired. My last show was October 17th of 2018. It was my 10-year anniversary returning as a former Miss Gay Muncie. And I was done. It wasn't fun anymore. And I was in retirement for 4 years and came across I went to a horror convention called Days of the Dead. And I met this couple that owned a bar in Lebanon, Indiana. And they said, we have a clientele that would love to see a drag show, but they don't feel safe going to Indianapolis. There's all kinds of drugs and crime, and the violence in Indianapolis has gotten so much worse since I left. So I wasn't the problem, kidding. So we started doing a show, and it was just really kind of cool because, there were 2 months in a row where we had the sheriff's department in Lebanon come and get a whole table for 12 people and sit and watch the show. And when I would ask them about it, they would say, we just need to know what all the fuss is about. So that's why we're doing this. We wanted to come and see, and they came back an additional month. But so I got back into it, and I begrudgingly so, because I was just like, when you do that, you open yourself up to everything imaginable. Like, it's all out there. People can figure out who you are, what you do. It just makes you a part of public property, people think. And I was kind of gracious with that, overly gracious, I think, because I let too many people have access to me that shouldn't have. But did the shows, and then finished up. I was working at a VA hospital, and that was my time there came to an end. And I got recruited by a recruiter to come out here to Oregon. Got linked up with some of the local people, and I did a show back in, I think, October, as a benefit for Summer's Eve, who is a local drag queen who was impacted by a car accident. And we had a fundraiser, and it was really fun. It's always a kind of notch in your belt to say I've been all over, and to say that I got to perform in, my hometown, my new hometown that I'd only been in for less than a few months was really exciting. But drag is something that I think everybody should try. I think it's something that everybody should be able to be a part of. I don't think anybody gets to gatekeep what we do as drag. I think that there are those of us who, it's so funny because the child becomes the parent, like I was a baby drag queen in 2006, and now, it's 2024, and I've been in it almost 20 years off and on. And even when I'm not actively performing, I'm still working on creating hair. I'm creating mixes. I'm sewing. I'm making costumes. I'm, creating concepts of numbers that I want to do. And so I'm constantly doing something drag related, even if I'm not actually performing. And so that's kind of the fun aspect for me. Doing drag in a rural area, it's very supportive. I come from Indiana, and so it's very like there. It's just kind of like the normies and the weirdos don't interact with each other. They just live parallel lives. Sometimes the normies will dip their toes into the weird water and they'll come to a drag show, but for the most part, we all kind of keep to ourselves in Indiana. And so, to come out here and see predominantly, the people that came were people that I would not expect to come to a drag show. And it shows that I think the area could really use its own venue to perform. And I would love to do that. I would love to. I have girls from back home that I work with on cast. I gave up my job as show director, which meant I planned the shows and I booked who I was going to work with for that show. I left that behind and left it to a good friend of mine, Alana Steele. And they're always trying to get me to come back. But I'm trying to get those girls to come out here and book a weekend where I can get them to perform. And like my cast out there is, several title holders and pageant winners and can sew and do hair, and they're entertaining. Like I picked the best of the best. We're called the Misfits because nobody really understood us, right? We were the ones that just kind of marched to our own drum. And when people tried to shame us, we were like, you're not going to shame me because you don't pay my bills and you don't get to have any say over what I do. So I'm going to do what I do, and you can love it or you can lump it, but I'm not going to change who I am for you. So I'm going to try in the next few months to try to get those girls out here in a venue and book a whole weekend. Cause I like doing drag. I like watching drag too. Cause I get something from all of it and I enjoy watching them. Like this, they have a show tomorrow night and I wish I could be there cause I know it's going to be entertaining. Like they're just such dedicated professionals to the art of female impersonation. That it's just the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, everybody's got nails and lashes, and they're really trying to give you the full experience that you're paying to see. And that to me is really cool because that's how I kind of try to do it, So birds of a feather flock together.
Cool. There's so much there. You gave me so much. So you're trying to get your Indiana queens out here to Pendleton?
Yes.
And do you think that's like a soon project or more of a dream project?
A little bit of both. I'm still trying to figure out what, I don't want to say politics because I don't think it's politics. I just want to figure out what the temperature is in Pendleton. I've made comments to the owners of the Speakeasy about they have a perfect venue for a brunch, and I put that out there. There's a couple of venues in town that I think would be really cool, but I just need to sit down. I need to find out who owns these places. And then I need to sit down and figure out how to get the girls out here and, make it worth their while to come out here, and so, but they're entertaining. They are I wish I could bring them out here tomorrow because it's just, they're so they sew and they make costumes and they do mixes of music, of songs, and they come up with concepts. And it's incredibly cool to see. And I would love to be able to bring that traveling show here and book them on a Friday night and Saturday night and then do a Sunday brunch so that it would be 3 full days of them being able to perform and be able to meet the community and stuff. But I come from a state that used to be really well known for drag. They used to be very well known for drag, and it's fallen out over the years because pageantry in general has kind of declined. It's expensive. Nobody's going out and spending $15,000 on an evening gown or, $12,000 on a creative costume or $8,000 on a talent. It's just, those people are investments. Like, they invest in this and it's something that they do. But for those of us that do it just because we want a shiny helmet and for fun, it's just not really as lucrative. You never get back what you invest in drag. You get back emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, but financially, you never get. As soon as you wear, somebody told me once, as soon as you wear something on stage, it's already decreased its value by 50% because it's already been seen. So a $300 costume is now a $150 costume. So you want to wear it until you get enough use out of it that you make your money back, but you also want to keep it good enough condition that you can sell it to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And they make money off of it too. So there's also that too. I love that about drag. I used to have, before it fed my hoarding side, but I used to be kind of what I would consider a drag historian. So I could go through my closet and tell you I had an outfit from Lena Myers that she gave me, and I had an outfit from so-and-so who I bought from, and this used to be so-and-so's ring. And like, that history was so important to me. And it was something that I enjoyed so much that it just became part of why I like doing drag. But yeah, I would love to, if, people that are listening to your podcast, if they're looking to have a regular show, I would love to be a showgirl again. I would love to do shows, whether it was once a week or once every couple of weeks, or, I love doing drag. I do. It's something that allows me, as a therapist, it's kind of like being a doctor. You can't really treat yourself, right? You can, but you should really go get the opinion of someone else. And it's as a therapist, I try not to therapize myself because I don't want to, overanalyze anything in my life. That's not healthy. So drag is my therapy. And I just started with a therapist yesterday out here, but drag is my therapy. Drag is my form of expression. It is my way of getting out really hard feelings that I don't know how to express necessarily, one of my exes one time was I did a set list. So I'd have 5 or 6 numbers that were in a row on a sheet of paper, and with them would have the costuming and the hair and the jewelry and shoes and stuff. So that if I had a helper in the back, they knew what I was going to get out of and get into next, so that we could kind of be prepared and not hold the rest of the cast up while I was getting ready. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" He said, "I don't know, but your set list is kind of pointed. Just making sure." And it was like a lot of breakup songs, like a lot of, angsty, like Michelle Branch and Avril Lavigne and Pink, and just like, "I don't need a man. I'm so amazing on my own. I'm a diva. It's whatever." And I was like, "Oh yeah, maybe I am going through something." But the music is how I express that, putting these things together and being able to do an interpretive piece of artwork that shared something very private and very hard to access otherwise for me was something that I valued, and I miss it. I miss doing it. I just did that show for Summer's Eve benefits on back last year, the end of last year, and I had so much fun. I got to work with Mink Marche. I'm her new #1 fan, whether she likes it or not. She's amazing. I got to work with Tatiana Rex. I worked with Chanel Diamond. And it was really nice. Like, the local girls have a lot of heart. I would like to see more of a presence of drag in that community because I think that people would love that. I think it's a nice, relaxing way. Sure, you can go out to a bar, you can have a couple of drinks, choose some pool and some darts, but wouldn't it be nice to go out and have some drinks and see a show? Like it'd just be something different. You can only bowl and go to the movies so many times before those get to be old hat, as I'm finding out here. Like, I'm talking to you now as I'm driving to Walla Walla looking for something to do because I just, I get a little stir crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Circling back a little bit, so how much have you tested the waters in Pendleton / like Eastern Oregon as a whole? Like, what do you think the climate is for now?
I think that it could just be me. I think that it's very open to that. I have a poster, the first show that I was booked in out here, the poster is hanging up on my wall in my office at work. And I have people, will ask me, when they first say, "Is that you? Are you on there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I point out to who I am. And they're like, "Oh my God, I love that so much. I wish we had more of it here." And I'm like, well, we're working on that. So on the streets, I'm hearing people say they would love to see more of it. For me, I am, far enough along in my clinical career that I would like to have something fill that extra time that I have. And drag would be something that I mean, I miss having a reason to sew and to style hair and to, keep up on my makeup skills, and, having that would be cool. It's just, I think that getting through, December and January are the hardest months in the hospitality industry. So getting through that and getting into maybe like March, and maybe seeing if I can't get something going in like maybe late March, early April, just to kind of, see, and fly my girls out here. They all need a vacation anyways because they're in Indiana, and that's enough to make you want to need a vacation. So they would come out here and see me, and I've told them they could stay with me. So that'll cut that cost, and I'll take them around Pendleton. And so they're open to it. It's just, I just have to, that's extra work of putting the details together. And I'm not used to doing that. I'm used to having people that are like, we really want you, and here's where you need to be, and here's when you need to be there, and here's what you need to bring. And I'm like, cool. It's kind of like a pitch-in dinner, right? Like, you tell me what you need me to bring. Don't expect me to like magically know, because I won't. I'll be like,
Yeah, no, coordinating these kind of things is way different than participating in these things. So best of luck with that.
yeah.
I think that's super interesting that you say the climate is good in Pendleton for things like drag and just queer stuff in general. Because did you see in Pendleton back in like July through September, did you see the billboard that EOCIL put up, the
Oh
Pride?
yeah, it was right outside my house because I lived up on the off a side street on the top of that hill, and so I saw it. That's how I was just like, okay, this seems like this is a great place to live, because it's like in Indiana you wouldn't have that. Like, a lot of the activities would be social media or word of mouth. You wouldn't put up something like that because you would almost be somebody to deface it or vandalize it.
Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't get defaced the whole time it was up. We very intentionally put it up during Roundup, just because we thought it would get a little more publicity, or just a little more visibility. Definitely had mixed reviews. There were a lot of people like yourself that were like really happy about seeing it, and then we got a lot of people who were really, really, really upset about it. And they said lots of silly things, called us evil, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So, but also, I also know that there is a really big and strong LGBTQ plus community in Pendleton. Do you participate at all in PFLAG activities, or are you familiar with UPP?
So um when I was first, so I moved here in July. In August, I had sent an email to PFLAG and said, hey, I'm new in town. I'm the queer therapist that just got hired. So if you would like me to come in and talk to your group or anything, please let me know. And Patrick Cahill, who is the director, or he's the head honcho, I think, or was at the time, of PFLAG, was like, we would love to have you come in, talk about your experience. And so I showed up, and it was interesting because I showed up and like 8 of my coworkers, including like my supervisor and like 3 other supervisors and like peers, and like all showed up to see this talk. And I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I just knew that I was going to talk about being the queer therapist. And so there were maybe 4 people that were from PFLAG that were there in attendance, and they got to kind of hear, the history of mental health in Oregon, because I have some coworkers that have really been in the game for a while and were able to kind of shed light on how we got here with mental health issues and with homelessness and poverty. Really just kind of shed a light on that, which was fascinating. I learned so much in that meeting. As far as the other stuff goes, I haven't participated a lot in PFLAG because when I did that initial, kind of conversation with them, and I was a guest speaker, like, I did it to be like, I'm here. If you need me, here's where I'm at. The one thing that I didn't want to do coming to a new community is I didn't want to have my hands in all of the pies and then not be able to be objective when people came to see me in therapy. There was a very important line to keep very drawn and very, prominent when it came to separation of my personal life and professional life, which is kind of ironic because, I talk about, everybody knowing I do drag. And so that's something, I guess, that I just really, I mean, there's not, when I come in on Monday morning and I've got leftover eyeliner in my eye, you're going to know that I wasn't skeet shooting that weekend. So, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, no, I really have just kind of made myself a resource and let them know, like, if you need anything at all, if you need, if you need resources on, HIV and AIDS statistics in the population, if you need support for legislation, if you need support for, if you want festivals, anything that you need, I'm here to support. Like, I'm here to help you out, but I don't want to actually have to be involved with everything, because I want to be more of a resource and less of a reliant. Like, I want something that you can be able to come and include without being, because I want people to have their own autonomy and I want them to have their own, independence working in this community. Nobody needs me to come in and tell them how to do things. I tried that with the drag show and it failed. I mean, kidding, but serious. Like, I was trying to kind of, educate them about benefit shows, because where I come from, that was one of the things. We all lived within, an eighth of a mile of each other. So yeah, I'll come, throw some drag on and I'll do a couple of numbers for you and raise money for HIV, or, traveling to a pageant, paying for your package, or, juvenile diabetes, or whatever the case may be. But it was more of a, when you're gonna have people come from long distances away, let's find a way to, give them a gas card or compensate them somehow, so that they're not having to go into debt helping me out, and that wasn't something that I felt like was well received, because, on the face value, well, it's a benefit show. You should donate absolutely everything that's involved. And I'm like, I understand that, but there are people that drove, and they could tell and I understand that, but it just didn't sit right with me. If I'm asking you to do me a favor, I'm going to try to go out of my way to make sure that you're not put off in the least bit, and if I wanted to give you money to help offset the cost, say, hey, here's, I'm just going to give you $50 for this. Well, I don't want it. Donate it to the cause. Absolutely. We'll make an announcement on the microphone that you donated $50 to the benefit, but giving the queens that autonomy, you're not a server, you're not a bartender, you're not a concierge, like, you're an independent working entertainer, and you have the right to determine what you're worth, and that was the thing that I tried to express, and it didn't go over very well, because it's a new concept. I mean, well, I want to do this, and so we should do this, and absolutely, but let's make it to where people want to come back and do it again. And let's do something maybe an adjacent to that is not necessarily for a benefit, but just for fun, where people can see another show. I mean, get them booked in town for the whole weekend and do something. And it just wasn't really well received at the time. And I know there was another show that was done afterwards, and I had to miss it because I do the LGBTQ resiliency support group at work, and the show started at 7. I didn't get out of work until 6, and there's no way I would look even halfway like a lady. Even if you squinted your eyes, I wouldn't look like even part of a lady with an hour to get ready. And I wouldn't put that on anybody. So, but yeah, no, I think that when I came to Pendleton, when I first started out at work, I walked around the town, and because I didn't have any patients, I didn't have any clients to see. And I would introduce myself and hand out my business card and be like, I'm the new therapist. My specialty is LGBTQ therapy. And, I just wanted to kind of introduce myself. And the consensus that I got from a lot of people was that there's such a need for it in Pendleton. Like, there was such a need in Umatilla County. There wasn't anything like that before. There were support groups, there was PFLAG, but there wasn't anything that was like helping the mental health process. It was more of like support, but they didn't really have maybe the tools or the credentials or the experience to deal with the mental health side of living in a rural area. So I was really seen as something that was beneficial to the community by a lot of people that I talked to. And so that was kind of the experience I've gotten. I mean, I will not sit here and invalidate anybody's experience that they've had in this community, in this area. I just know that there's more allies out there than we realize. And I know that there are people that are very grateful that I came here, because they may not be able to outwardly say that they appreciate it, but they're able to express that is there for their loved ones. And I met so many people who were like, I am so grateful that you have, you've come because, you're going to help my uncle, you're going to help my cousin, my brother, my sister committed suicide, this, and it was something really like, I kind of took the temperature when I got here about like, how is this go? Because I'd done my research, like you could, as much as you can Google. And I mean, I did the best I could with that. But I come from Indiana, and it's like, I mean, I don't know how it is out here. The only thing I can think of is that like people will, say it maybe behind your back and not to your face. In Indiana, they'll just tell you exactly what they think. They'll use any kind of slur possible because what are you going to do? I mean, there's no law in Indiana to protect us against it. Every time there's a hate crime law proposed, it's always shot down because those people, quote unquote, those people shouldn't get special treatment, which if you ask any of those people, they don't need special treatment. They're just asking for same protection under the law that everybody else has.
Yeah. There is absolutely a need for your services in places like Umatilla County and just like anywhere in Eastern Oregon. How did you become passionate about LGBTQ plus mental health and what inspired you to specialize in this field other than like, I guess just personal connection to it?
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of what we do is just try to get to know ourselves better, and I had, been privy to a lot of conversations about, being misunderstood. I did a manuscript in undergrad on female gender illusion and how drag queens pick their stage names and how they do the coming out process, of telling family, I'm going to be a drag queen and you're going to get a lot of notoriety for that because, it's like they're going to want to talk to your family and be like, how did you know that this person wanted to be a drag queen? And it's like, so it's not just a person thing. If you have that connection to extended family, it's kind of like you have to prepare everybody for what's coming. And so I guess it was just to kind of better explain my experience, and be able to, separate, I would go in and I would do a speaker panel and we would talk to people about the differences between transgender, transsexual, cross-dressers, and drag queens. And, I feel like that every time that I got to do that, that it was a very encouraging moment because those people left those situations educated and knowing that, just because you see somebody who is a drag performer doesn't mean that they're necessarily transitioning. Just because you see somebody who's transitioning doesn't necessarily mean they want to be a drag performer. And so that experience has been something that I think kind of, you get tired of explaining your experience, I think, at a certain point. And so for me, it was just like, I'm going to get as educated as I can. So when somebody tries to have an opinion and be negative, I'm going to be like, well, the facts are, the research shows. And that was a lot of what I did. I mean, kill them with data, kill them with research, kill them with all of that, and you can't refute the facts. You can't. Like, data is hard, cold facts, like that's the truth. That is what it is. So yeah. But I think that fueled it, and I kind of wanted to understand my own self, like, what is this that I'm doing? Like, what does this mean long term, And of course, I got access to like celebrities, I mean, drag queens back in Indiana were like celebrities. And so I got to go in dressing rooms and talk to people and be very involved in the scene. And I felt very special. And then I started doing it and then I felt even more special. And I was like, well, this is fun. I like this. So I'm going to keep doing it. So
You mentioned a little bit I'm gonna do a hard pivot
sure.
because you mentioned, I think you said the class you took about, or the class you talked about drag queens picking their like personas and stuff.
Yeah,
So I wanna pivot a little bit and
sure.
um can you share the story behind your drag persona and talk a little bit about how you chose your name and your style and your character?
Yeah. So it's really funny. I don't know if you've ever heard They joke about you make your drag name is your or your porn. They say your porn name or your drag name, but they say it's a combination of your dog growing up and your mom's maiden name is one of the formulas.
Wow.
Well, my dog growing up was Chelsea, and my mom's maiden name was Parker. And Nicole just kind of, made it sound a little more fluid. I didn't want it to be just Chelsea Parker because short version of a long story, I had grown up. I had been adopted by a parent, so I have my mom got remarried, and my mom wasn't married when she had me, and then she got married when I was in second grade, and so, but I had her name for the longest time, and people used to tell me to park it Parker, and that used to make me so mad, and so choosing a name, I didn't want it to be something that I had to, that I was going to be stuck with, that was going to be derogatory or hurtful, and I would just dread it. So I figured Nicole was something that was very like Southern and very light and very fun. So it was something that I added to it. But my persona was really, I don't know, it's always been about the music for me, always. It's, like I said, we always used to joke in the dressing room, nobody's going to squint their eyes and believe that this, 5'10" and a half, 205-pound muscle boy is, a lady. But being able to go out and just suspend disbelief, for a night is why I think it was so much fun, and being able to experience that with people that I, built friendships with. But no, the doing the manuscript was a lesson for me in not only access to how people really felt about presentation and representation when it came to that. And this was way before any of the TV shows or reality competition. This was 2005, 2006 that I was putting this together. And so it was just really interesting because, it wasn't as widespread as it is today. And now I look back on that research and I'm like, well, I bet that somewhere, somehow, there's probably a need for that research. Because when I was doing my lit review for that, there was hardly anything to be found. It was just very limited stuff. And it was all heteronormative voices. There wasn't a lot of information that was from, the voices of people who performed. It was just a lot of, assumptions made by people who had maybe gotten to sit in the front row of a show, but they hadn't really wanted to, talk to the actual person about their experience, which is kind of sad. I'm like, get firsthand detail. And I used to have that, I would go in these dressing rooms and say, I want to interview you. And I interviewed people and I got the perspective and I was able to try working on sharing it. And then I had a situation with a professor where I was in Philly for grad school, and she pretty much informed me that she was going to lose her tenure track if she didn't get to be primary author on my article. And so I wasn't sure what to do ethically. I talked to a couple of people and the whole kind of thing just kind of fell apart because I was like, I just didn't feel comfortable doing that because it felt like a lie. It felt like I had done all this work and put all this stuff together and then somebody else needed to come in and get credit for it. And I was like, that doesn't feel right. This doesn't seem to be right at all. And unfortunately, it cost me that friendship. And it's sad because I really respected her up until that point. And then to be put in that position was like, it was almost unethical to me because it was like, you're making me lie because you're making me tell people that you did more work than, and she did, she supervised it, but it was my project, and so it was put me in a really hard position that I didn't care for, was not cool at all. And so I just kind of let the project die and never really said anything else about it. But it was something that at the time was really important to me because there was a lot of information that wasn't out at the time. I do recognize that I'm glad that that information did not make it out because I think it would have been very dated. It would have been very one-sided. It would have been very misconstrued, could have possibly been seen because it was at a time where the conversation was about doing, performing versus, being a what you call a quote boy queen, versus being somebody who was trans and competing against somebody who was trans. And so there were a lot of opinions that were, happened at that time. And, I'm glad that the research didn't manifest into anything else, because I wouldn't want those opinions to come back. And, we have this really hard time in our society where we like to go back in history and say, 48 years ago, you were really mean to a waitress, so we should cancel you from life. And it's like, it's really not cool to do that, because, you're not giving people the opportunity to learn. You're not giving people the opportunity to express, that they've changed. And it's really kind of limiting, it's sad. And so I'm glad that it didn't, like I said, make it out, because I don't think it would have been fair. I don't think it would have been a very fair, it would not have aged well, and my population, all I can say is that they were, what I had access to at the time, which was white male boy queens. That's all I had access to. I didn't have access to anybody at the time who was, trans or trans identified. So, it was just me starting off like, wonder what these people think, wonder what my coworkers think. And then finding out that it was a lot different than what I expected, but it was kind of what I expected, because I mean, pageantry is hard, and you are at the whimsy of the judges panel. You sign up and pay all that money so that people can tell you their opinion. And it's not always fun, so.
Can you talk a little more about your project, your research project? Like how did that start, and where did it, I mean, you said where it went, but how did that begin? What got you there?
I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do as, like, because I had extra time. I had extra time in my schedule, and I had plenty of credits because I had gone to junior college. And so I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? And so I was like, well, why not do? And I just started performing around that time. And I was like, well, I have access to all these people, so why don't I find out what, they think about this? So I kind of went that route, and it was really cool because I did have access to it, and there was a lot of people that wanted to talk about this because it was important. I mean, it was important. They were competing in pageants. They were doing these things, and so they had firsthand experience of what it was like to, you know, run into the difficulties of creating the female form when you are a stick straight up and down boy. How do you do this? And so that was something that was really kind of cool to kind of experience with them. But it was really just out of, again, wanting to understand myself better, like wanting to know more about why, I got such a good feeling from being on. I mean, I was a show choir kid. Of course, I'm going to have a good feeling being on stage. But why did, drag do something so much more for me? Why was it so much more enticing and inviting? And that, it just made me feel more connected to myself. It kind of finished the unanswered questions in myself about, I had thought when I grew up in that very small area, it was my idea that I was going to have some sort of gender reassignment. I didn't have any desire to be a girl, but I figured that was the only way I was going to be able to have a relationship with a guy, because I grew up in, a very repressed area. And so, that was one of my earliest memories of knowing that I was different, and so being able to go in and explain that to myself, to my 8, 9-year-old self about why I felt this way was really kind of cool, because I kind of was like, oh, okay, and you can do this and not be, and now, fast forward 2024, there are people that are identify as heterosexual that do drag and that have made kind of a career on that. And there's a performer on a reality TV show that it's the whole shtick that they are heterosexual and they do drag. And I'm like, I'm not going to gatekeep that. Enjoy, have a good time, because it's a lot of fun what we do. It's a lot of fun. I encourage everybody to try it at least once, because it is a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Do you wanna talk a little bit about did you have much of a gender journey? Yeah, a gender journey. Because you say that when you were younger, you thought in order to be with a man, you would have to transition, but then when you came out with your mom when you came out to your mom, she asked if you were trans, and you said, "No, for sure." So, what is your relationship with gender looked like throughout the years?
I have tried to be very respectful of all expressions of gender because I think that it's important for everybody at the table to have an opportunity to describe how they want to be seen and how they want to be experienced. Um, and my one of my best friends for a long time, trans and a person of color, and like she educated me so much on what it meant to, deal with certain things that I had never thought about. Um, she educated me a lot on sex work, which I was, completely. It was completely foreign to me to understand that concept of, you know, and she sat me down and she said, if you're paying for your transition and you don't have money and you can't go get a 9 to 5 job because you're not passing, how do you think you're going to make that money to get your transition fully completed? And I was like, pick up a paper route? No. But you know what I mean? I was like, I don't know. Sell Girl Scout cookies? I was completely naive. And she was like, well, a lot of people, they're either entertainers or they do sex work. And I was like, huh, I had no idea. None at all. And it was very educational. And she was always very kind and very, willing to answer those questions for me. And she knew that I was in school and what she would tell me would kind of translate into, know, me taking it to school and educating others. And that was important. And she's still back in Indiana, still educating people and working on, getting the word out about awareness and education about, being able to support people that are in those positions. And that's one thing that I will say that I try to bring from Indiana out here is visibility. Visibility is something that I talk to my LGBTQ group about religiously. I try to make sure that they know that it's really important if you feel like you can to do so, because it's so important. That visibility is so important. It really is. It's just, it's, you think it may not be, but then when you look at it and, you have people going into a voting booth and they're making decisions based on what they think of that population, it's really hard for them to discriminate against you unless they've met you, or if they haven't met you. So like being able to, say, hey, like, here's the deal. Like, you met somebody like this now. So when you go in there, you're going to make more of an educated guess and educated choice on how you view those people instead of just an assumption based on what you've seen on Fringe Network TV. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah.
Live your life within the moment. And don't go wait until
Hi everyone, and I'd like to thank you all for listening to today's episode. It is going to be a 2-part series, so I encourage you all to stay tuned next month to hear the second part of this conversation between Mary Ellen and Nathan. With that being said, if there's anything that you have questions about or want to know more, I encourage everyone to check us out online at www.eocil.org, or you can interact with us on any one of our various social media platforms, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. With that being said, this has been another podcast by Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living.
we get lost in the crowd, it's getting thicker. We get away from the drinks and chatter. Haven't said a word, but it doesn't matter.